Now, I know it's only the start of June and we are entering the football void, which is, of course, the summer, but I thought we would take a look at next season's championship campaign a little bit earlier than normal by having a guess as to what every single team in the league is going to be fighting for next season and what the prospect of each team is, which, as a Boro fan, isn't all that great. So, as always, we are going to be using a good old tier list to take a look at where we think each team's prospects will be next season and what we think they'll be fighting for. And that's the important thing. The big disclaimer in this video is this. This is not a 1 to 24. This is not me predicting the two teams that are going to be in the automatic promotion places, the 4 that will be in the playoffs, and the 3 who will get relegated. This is not a 1 to 24. We'll do that next month. This is me predicting what each team will be fighting for. So, for example, last season in automatic promotion, you'd have Leeds, Burnley, Sheffield United, and maybe even Sunderland. In the playoffs, you could have had upwards of from 4 teams to probably 7 or 8. And then in the relegation battle, at the end of last season, we had maybe 5 or 6, 7 sides fighting for survival. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to take all 24 teams and take a guess at what they'll be fighting for next season, starting with a pretty big one, and that's Birmingham City. Now, of course, Birmingham are coming up to the Championship with huge money and huge momentum. They set the record last season for the most points accumulated in League One, so they could be arguably one of, if not the best, League One side to come into the Championship that we've seen for a long time, if not ever. So there is, of course, a lot of hype, a lot of momentum, a lot of money behind this Birmingham City side, and it is one that could massively disrupt the Championship. And we've seen in the past what momentum can do for sides going up and down the divisions one way or the other. We saw that with Ipswich a couple of seasons ago. But I am going to temper my expectations for Birmingham City. I'm not expecting them to do an Ipswich and just go bang, bang, bang and go straight through the Championship, because I think that is proving to be extremely difficult with the parachute clubs. However, I do think Birmingham will be in the playoff mix. I think if it's anything like this season and the bar's really low and the playoff race is really poor, then they've got every chance of getting themselves in there. But I do think they'll just carry the momentum, they'll spend the money required and have a squad good enough, which I think will still be in and around the playoff mix. Blackburn's a tough one. Blackburn always seem to find their way up there, but they're a very streaky side and one that I can never really understand or trust. They can look like $1 million and have been on an amazing run of form, and then they can then go lose 5 in a row. Equally, they can look like they're absolutely falling through the league. They're at rock bottom, they're in free fall, and they'll go and win 5 in a row. And that was how it kind of was last season. So I don't know which side of Ishmael's Blackburn will turn up throughout next season. Chances are they'll probably be really good one week, really bad the next. And that really results in an inconsistent side that levels off somewhere in the middle. So assuming the playoff battle won't be as weak as it was this year, I do think Blackburn will just slip in to mid-table and not be in the fight for the top 6 as much as they were this season. I'm going to say the same for Bristol City. The one big reason why I've got them in mid-table is because it looks like they're losing Liam Manning, which I really, really sympathise. I really, really do. I think it's a gut-wrenching move. It's a gut-wrenching kick in the stomach for all Bristol City fans. I thought they were building something really good. I thought he was taking them, small steps towards being a more consistent playoff side, and to see him leave, but also leave for a Championship playoff-chasing rival in Norwich, is an even bigger blow. So if that comes off, then unless they get an unbelievable appointment in, I think Bristol City will maybe take a slight step back, and without Liam Manning, I've got them just dropping back into mid-table. Charlton up next. Now, I'm delighted Charlton are back in the Championship. A bit like Pompey, I have a real soft spot for them. Maybe it's the mid-2000s Premier League fan in me. I just love seeing these clubs that were up there with Boro fighting in the Premier League back in the day, doing well and getting back up to the Championship once again. And it was great to see Charlton back up. And listen, with Nathan Jones at the helm, if he stays there, I think they've got every chance of staying up. But I think of the 3, they are probably the ones of the 3 newly promoted sides expected to be in the biggest battle for survival, and that's why I am going to put them in a relegation battle. That's not me saying they're going to go down in the bottom 3 next season, but I do think they'll be scrapping around it for the majority. Coventry are up next, and I am confident they'll be in the playoff mix next season. I think I've seen enough from Frank Lampard to suggest that it's just a good fit there. Of course, The question marks are, was it a new manager bounce? Was it just an initial impact of a new manager? Will things level out next season? And maybe that's the case, and maybe they will. But I honestly feel like if Coventry can keep a lot of their squad together and maybe improve in key areas, I think they've got a great foundation there to once again be a playoff chaser. Whether they are 15th after 10 games, whether they start really badly, which they always do, Coventry always find their way back there eventually. I doubted they'd do it last season. They proved me wrong. I'm not going to doubt them again this season, and that's why I think they're probably one of the stronger playoff contenders. Derby County are next, and I have not forgotten about Derby County this time like I did in the last video before anyone corrects me who didn't watch the video for over 4 minutes. But anyway, yes, Derby County, I think, and this is the issue, and I'm going to mention this with a lot of teams this season and with this tier list, I think there could be a couple of real surprise casualties this season. Because the strength of the teams coming up is so strong, I think the trapdoor for one of the more established championship sides to be sucked in and maybe fall back down to League One could be bigger than ever. And there are a number of clubs who I think if they're not careful, they could fall through that trapdoor. Derby could be one of them. I'm not sure if things will continue to progress under John Eustace. I'm not sure if he'll start steering them towards a more stable mid-table season. But from what I've seen, I still feel like they'll be down there fighting. And I do think they will be in a relegation battle next season. And they're going to be joined by Hull City. And I've got no real doubts about this. Hull are a side and a club that just can't really hold down a manager, have no real stability at all right now. They're chopping and changing from one season to another. And exactly like I've just said, it could be the season where a club like Hull slips and falls through the trapdoor down to League One. We don't know what to expect with whoever their new manager is or may be, or if they've even got one in yet. I'm not too sure at time of recording, but I just worry with everything that's going around at Hull, it only ends one way, and that is that eventually they'll find themselves in trouble, and this could be the season where things get really, really serious for them. So I do think, once again, like they stared upon the final day last season, they'll be in a relegation battle once again. Ipswich Town are next. Now, I'm not going to give them the kiss of death that I gave Luton last summer when I did say they'd bounce straight back at the first time of asking as champions, and the less I said about that, the better. But I am going to say something similar about Ipswich Town, and that is that I think they have got a squad ready to bounce straight back up, a manager who has proven he's one of the best at this level, a ground in Portman Road that is an absolute fortress, and of course they come down with, as we now know, every single year is the biggest of advantages, and that is the parachute payments and the financial weight that Premier League sides come down with. And Ipswich will have all of them things in their favour. And I've seen already bookies, many people have them as favourites to go straight back up, arguably as champions. And I'd be shocked if they're not in the automatic promotion fight next season. It would have to take something disastrous, like them losing McKenna or something, I think, for things to go south. I don't think there'll be another Luton. I think that was a freak, if I'm honest. So, yeah. And like with a lot of the teams who are going to come down, I think they should be, just by default, unfortunately, for the Championship, they should be by default one of the biggest favourites to go back up. And Ipswich, out of the three who've come down, are probably in the best nick to do so. Now, I would say the same about Leicester City. But of course, they have a reported 15 points deduction, which, if true, rules them out of the automatic promotion race instantly. We've saw over the last few seasons how relentless the pace is that is set by the teams at the top now. And if we're going to be looking at sides who are going to be hitting 90 plus points again, you've got to be hitting 2 points a game from the get-go. You've got to be nearly at 20 points, if not higher, after 10 games. That's not going to happen with Leicester if they're starting on minus 15. So that instantly erases them from that. However, as I mentioned, unfortunately, the financial might and the squads and just how big these clubs are that are coming down now and the gap between the two leagues, which is shocking. I don't take any joy in saying this. Even a side like Leicester, who come down with a 15 points deduction, I still think will be in the playoff mix. You know, we saw last season the gap from Sheffield United, who instantly, they come down in a bit of a mess. Didn't have as big of a points deduction, granted, but they still come down off of a terrible season in the Premier League. They still managed to get themselves upwards of 90 points. So for me, if Leicester can have even a slightly as good of a season, I think they'll be in the playoff mix. And we saw again last season how big the gap was between the top two and the playoff pack, the chasing pack, and you were looking at upwards of over 20 points a gap there anyway. So that 15 points gap will be a tough one to swallow for Leicester, if that is indeed what they start on, but I still think they'll have enough to get themselves back into the top 6, which is a bit of a shame really, and it tells you all you need to know about the gap between the teams coming down and the rest. Next up, we've got my lot, Boro, and this might surprise a lot of you because I'm normally quite big on Boro, quite the optimist with Boro, as I have been in past seasons, but I'm also a big realist, and I'm going into this season with no expectations whatsoever. I honestly have no real optimism to go into this season with at all. You know, under Michael Carrick, we've regressed year on year. Points-wise, goals scored, we seem to be just slipping and sliding further away from the top 6 every single season, and we missed out comfortably in the end. You know, on the final day, in what was one of the weakest playoff chasing packs ever. Now, if the playoff race is stronger next season, which you'd have to assume it will be, Boro have got to improve massively to be in that fight, and I just don't see it. And I think paired that with the fact that we're not even sure if Michael Carrick will be here throughout the season. You know, if we start badly, things will go south quickly. The majority of the fans are already having major doubts. A lot of them have already just checked out and don't want him here anymore. What I'm saying is the faith and belief in Michael Carrick to take Boro to where they need to be is at its lowest. And if we don't start the season off well, he could be sacked early doors. Steve Gibson likes sacking managers in October. I can absolutely see that happening, and Boro having a new manager come New Year. So there is a lot up in the air at Boro, and I think things are teetering on going wrong very, very quickly if we don't start well. Paired that with the regression under Michael Carrick that I think is just undoubtedly there, I'm putting Boro in mid-table. I think if the playoff race is even slightly stronger than last season, we're going to be 10th to 14th, and unfortunately, I've got no reason to think otherwise. Next up, we've got Millwall. Now, I'd be a fool to not put Millwall in the playoff mix. I backed them to be a playoff chasing side last season. They proved me right, and they always tend to do it, don't they? They always find a way of getting 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and they always miss out narrowly at the very, very end. Regardless of manager, of squad, of budget, Millwall always find a way into that playoff pack, and I'm going to back them to do it again. Does that mean I think they're going to finish in the top 6? Probably not, but I do believe they'll once again find their way up there somehow, and they'll be in the scrap come the end of the season. They'll probably fall short, but I'd be an idiot to not once again back Millwall to be in the playoff mix. Norwich are an interesting one, because they might be bringing in Liam Manning, who of course could be leaving Bristol City. So is Bristol City's loss Norwich's gain? I'd say yes. Now, I think there are plenty of good things at Norwich which could be built on. They've got a very good attack, albeit will they still have Sargent and Sainz next season? If they do, I think they're an undoubted playoff chasing side. If they don't, their defence needs a lot of work, which means they could drop into mid-table mediocrity. So if there was a category in between, Norwich would sit perfectly in that. But if they do bring in Liam Manning, I just like that as an appointment. And I'm sorry to say to Bristol City fans, it could be one that just pulls Norwich into the playoff mix. So that's where I'll put them for now. Next up, we've got Oxford United. Unfortunately, I think they will just remain in a relegation battle next season. I think given their budget, their squad, it's always going to be a tough task for Oxford to stay up in the Championship. And I think next season, as I mentioned, it could be tougher than ever with some of the teams coming up being really, really strong. So that's why I think Oxford will once again be in that battle fighting for their lives. Do I think they'll stay up? They probably will. Gary Rowett is the perfect man to do that and has ended up being an inspired appointment at the club, but I still think they'll be down there fighting for their lives in a relegation battle. Pompey are next, and I think they will take a step into mid-table. I saw enough last season to suggest that they will do so. Their home form was outstanding, and if they can maintain that and even remotely improve their away form, they're going to be comfortably in mid-table, and they might even start casting their eyes on what could be above them. But I'm not going to get too carried away about that just yet. There are things to improve. Away form is a must for Pompey, but they've got the platform, especially at Fratton Park, to kick on and enter that mid-table part of the Championship. And for me, as a person who likes Pompey, hopefully establish themselves as a solid Championship side. Preston are next, and I very much put them in the same boat as a Derby and as a Hull. They could be a side who get pulled in and could slip into the trapdoor if they're not careful next season. The end of last season was a big worry for Preston. I'd normally have them mid-table without even a second thought, but I think what I saw last season the lack of a budget there, the teams coming up as I've mentioned, they could be one of them sides that slip in and could find themselves in a bit of bother at some stages of next season. So there is a part of me that thinks Preston will just naturally stabilise back to the middle of the Championship where they often always are, but I also feel like they might be in a relegation battle if they're not careful. QPR are next up, and they're one of the easiest for me. I'm going to stick them right in the middle. I think they're just too good to be in a relegation battle. I think I saw at times last season that they could potentially even be playoff chasers, but I think they just end up averaging out somewhere in the middle to QPR. They're not quite good enough for the top six, and don't think they'll be good enough next season, but I also think they're going to probably be too good to get themselves relegated and be in real trouble anyway if Sheffield does stick around. So that's why for me they average out to be right in the middle, and that's in mid-table. Sheffield United are next up, of course, the playoff final losers. They might be sacking Chris Wilder as well. I've seen reports that might happen, which would be crazy. But for me, I think it would also be crazy to not have them in the automatic promotion race next season. Listen, we saw Leeds suffer playoff heartbreak the season before last. They bounced back. Sheffield United could do the same. I think their team is still very good, and it still will be very good going into next season. And I just see them getting somewhere near that 90-point mark that will keep them in the automatic promotion fight for long enough. Now, do I think they'll get top two? I'm not too sure. But I think we saw last season they come off the back of a tough Premier League campaign, got themselves going really quickly. They have to do something similar this season. Get over the end of last season, get over the disappointment, and just get going again for this campaign. And I think if they do that, they will be comfortably in and around 90 points once again, which means they'll be fighting for the top two. Sadly, looking at the other side of Sheffield, I think Sheffield Wednesday could be the opposite, because I think Danny Rule really held this club together and got the most out of the side. There seems to be a lot of reports linking him with many other clubs. I'd be very surprised if he's still there next season. Plus, there's a lot of off-the-field issues that are starting to rear their head once again, which of course worry me. And off-the-field issues always leak onto the pitch regardless, especially if it's linked to players' wages. So like Hull, like Derby, like Preston, probably more than the last few, I think Sheffield Wednesday could be in danger of being one of them sides who find themselves in trouble and fall into the trapdoor and be in a relegation scrap next season. I genuinely, with everything going on there right now, I worry they could fall into the relegation mix. Southampton are next, and again, it's a bit like Sheffield United the season before. They might come down after a terrible Premier League campaign, off the back of a campaign that was really, really, really bad, really negative. But Sheffield United proved that a team can quite easily come down, acclimatise and get going quickly. I'd be silly to not think Southampton could do the same. Now again, this shouldn't be the case, but this is the sad reality of the gap between the leagues now and the sheer power and money that the teams coming down have, and the fact they can come down off of such a poor season and still be massive, massive favourites to go straight back up. Unfortunately, that's the nature of where we are. I don't like it. I want them to fix it, of course, but I'd be stupid to not expect Southampton to be another side instantly fighting for automatic promotion next season. And I think Leicester would be the other one who I'd put with them. If it wasn't for their points deduction, I think there'd be 4 clear sides fighting for the top 2, which is a shame to write that off already. But as I say, that's where we are at this stage, unfortunately, with the relegated sides and the power that they have. And it's for that reason that I think Southampton, just naturally by default, will be fighting for automatic promotion. Stoke are next. Now, I've learnt a lot about Stoke over the years, and that is that they always finish between 14th and 18th. And that's why they're going in mid-table mediocrity. Christ, I got a little bit too excited there and put them in the playoffs. Now, I'm never going to fall for this. Every single season, we almost fall for it. Not going to fall for it again. Never have, never will. Stoke will once again finish between 14th and 18th, and they'll be in mid-table. I do have an inkling they won't be in as much trouble next season, but as equally, they could be like a Hull, and they could find themselves finally falling through the trapdoor and getting in real trouble. I don't know with Stoke, but I think it's just safe to say they'll finish 16th again, and they won't be in much trouble either way. Swansea, I think will join them. There was a part of me that thought, maybe playoffs. They had a good end to last season. Alan Sheehan did a decent job at the end of the season there. Could they take a step up? but I'm not going to quite get too excited about Swansea yet. They could be one of the better sides of mid-table. That's why I'll put them at the front. There we go. I think they maybe, once again, like before, could be knocking on the door 10th or 11th, but never really being a serious playoff chasing side. But you never know. They're one of the mid-table sides, so I fancy could break into the top 6 battle. But for now, I'm just going to temper my expectations and put Swansea in the middle. Watford are next, and they're going to be in there as well. You could make an argument with everything going on there. They could drop into the bottom bracket, but I think they'll just be safely in mid-table. I don't believe for a second that they'll be a playoff chaser. I think this instant, sacking a manager every single season, this hope for instant success if you keep just swapping the man in charge, I think the idea that will just randomly work for Watford is crazy for me. And I think it will eventually do them more damage long term than good. But I think for now, we'll see a new manager come in. He might have a decent start. There might be a bit of a bounce there. But I think naturally Watford will just average out to being in and around mid-table once again. And sod's law, this time next year, we'll probably be looking at another Watford manager. West Brom are next. There's every reason to suggest they might be mid-table. You could put them in the same bracket as Boro, Bristol City maybe, but I've just got a feeling West Brom will be in the playoff mix next season. Now, it depends who they bring in. Ryan Mason is rumoured. I'm not 100% sure on that and whether it'll be a good move or not, but I've just got a feeling West Brom do have it in them to be a playoff chasing side. They had a disappointing end last season, do not get me wrong, but I think if they can just make a few corrections in the transfer window, I'd always fancy them to be a playoff chasing side of sorts. So that's why I'm going to back them to do it again, although I can absolutely see the argument as to why they could drop into mid-table. And finally, finishing with arguably the most interesting of them all, paired with Birmingham, you could say, and that is Wrexham, who have, of course, powered their way through the leagues, through the EFL, and will be hoping to do so once again in the Championship. But like Birmingham, I think they will hit a bit of a wall. I think there will be a bit of a reality check for Wrexham this season, and I can't quite see them having the same level of success that Birmingham will, being playoff chasers. Now, I know they'll come up and spend. They have bought a lot of Premier League experience with players who used to be in the Premier League but have passed their prime now, which is a strange model. It's worked to a degree in League 2 and League 1 for them. I'm not sure it'll work in the Championship. If them players get injured, things could suddenly go south for Wrexham quite quickly. But momentum is a big thing, as I mentioned with Birmingham, and for that reason, I'm going to just temper my expectations and put them in mid-table. Now, they equally could have an absolutely amazing start and be in the top 6 for the first few weeks of the season. 100%, but I think the Championship is just such a different beast. It is so competitive. Some of the sides in there are absolutely streets ahead, especially the ones who come down. So that's where I think Wrexham could have a bit of a reality check. So for now, I'm just going to sit them comfortably and safely in mid-table. So guys, there's my tier list on where I think each team will be fighting for. Of course, it's not my 1 to 24. That will come over the next few weeks. But that's where I think each team will be fighting. Now, I'm pretty certain of the top bar. I think them three will definitely be the ones looking at 90 plus points. Leicester would join them. If not for their points deduction, listen, if the points deduction doesn't happen for some random reason, I'd absolutely have Leicester in that top bracket. But for now, I'm going to edge my bets and say it will. And that's why there'll be a top 6 side. So there's the teams I think will be in the playoff mix. I'm very confident in Leicester and Coventry being in there. That probably leaves only one spot. So you've got all these teams potentially fighting for 6th, which could be an absolute demolition derby, which could be thrilling. Norwich, West Brom, all the likes fighting for 6th. And if there were any teams in the mid-table bracket who could break into the top 6, I think Swansea, Blackburn, Bristol City, Boro are likely contenders to do so. But as I said, the playoff battle I don't think will be as weak as last season. Therefore, the teams who finished outside might find it difficult to get back in there once again. And then you could equally say there's a couple of teams in this mid-table bracket who could fall into the bottom bracket if things don't go well. Your Stokes, your QPRs, even your Watfords, if things don't go well, could fall into a scrap with the teams down here at the bottom. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, whether you agree with the tier list or not, where you'd put your team and where you think your team will be fighting this time next season. And you can also do this tier list yourself. I'll put a link in the description for you guys to go and check it out if you want to do your own over there. But until next time, if you've enjoyed the video, guys, smash a like on the video. It really supports the video and the channel out. Subscribe for more. We will be back to do more Championship prediction content throughout the next few weeks here on the channel. So hit the bell so you're notified whenever that good stuff drops. But until next time, guys, do take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.